Well, welcome everybody to tonight's presentation. Thank you for coming in person, and thank you to everybody on Zoom for coming. My name is Melissa. I am one of the librarians here at the Goshen Public Library. For those who are here in person, please make note of the emergency exits. We have one here, one back there, one over there. If you need to use the restrooms, they are right outside, right behind you. And we are so happy to have the county here tonight. On Zoom, we have Education Programming Coordinator from the Orange County Water Authority, Mary Lynn Malone. We also have our Orange County Recycling Coordinator, Ermin Silkovich. And also, so without further ado, I'd also like to introduce our Goshen Mayor, Molly O'Donnell.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Molly O'Donnell. I am the mayor of the Village of Goshen. We have a lot to go over this evening, so I'm just going to do a quick introduction and bio of the presenters tonight so you know who's speaking with you about the important topics that we're going to be going over. So first up is Ermin Silkovich. Ermin has been 19 years in sustainability, the last 16 years being in materials management. He interned at the office of Congressman Maurice Hinchey back in 2005. Then he went on to organizing conferences on sustainability and workshops on permaculture design. From 2008 to 2016, he was part of zero waste programs, which were funded by DASNY, formerly OROE. I'm sure he'll explain what that is if we need to. And then currently he is the Orange County Recycling Coordinator. He's been with the county since 2016. I can tell you firsthand from working with him with the county, he's doing amazing things and really working to collaborate with other municipalities and other folks like the people in this room and with OCWA to make sure that we are educating the public and really engaging in how to reduce our impact on the planet and really, care about our environment. We also have Mary Lynn Malone. Thank you so much for joining us. Mary Lynn is with OCWA and has been with them since 1994. She has extensive involvement and has done a lot of great programs with OCWA. So we really thank her for joining us today for this great program. Also with me is Maria Darby. She'll be here throughout the program to speak to some of the efforts that the village has been going on. And we are really, really excited to partner with all of you. And thank you for joining us tonight. So thank you, Ermin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ermin Silkovich, as Molly explained earlier. I'm recycling coordinator in Orange County. I worked at the Department of Sanitation of New York for a program that received funding from the Department of Sanitation called the Office of Recycling Outreach and Education. And there we basically, on a building by building, block by block, borough by borough basis, devised recycling programs to help divert more waste from the landfills, whether it be a clothing collection drive or going into buildings, educating residents about how to separate their recyclables from their trash. We did it. Towards the end of my career there, we also were on the brink of starting the composting program that they started citywide. So I helped with that program as it was just starting to be launched. It's had some growing pains, but I'm watching it from afar and rooting for it. In the meantime, I'm here in Orange County back home where I pretty much grew up, down the street from here pretty much. And I'm very happy and pleased and honored to be back here and sharing information with you all in hopes of, as Molly mentioned, just starting to move the needle and trying to live a little bit more lightly on the planet, because what we're going to show you today and what Mary Lynn especially is going to show you. Sorry, I should have had my title slide on. What Mary Lynn from the Orange County Water Authority is going to show you in a few moments after I'm done, it's going to be pretty stark. But I promise we'll provide for you solutions that we don't have to occupy Wall Street for. We don't have to go, do anything crazy. We could really, just band together, a lot of people or a good amount of people doing making a few small changes can make a great impact. All right, let me just see how to get on title slide here. Okay, hold on. No, it's not it. Oh, it's not going to do it.
And Ermin, just so that you know, we're seeing your presenter view at the moment from Zoom.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how I get it off presenter view for you. without messing everything up.
No
Okay,
worries.
I present the view. Okay, here we are. How's that?
Great.
All right, everybody, sorry for all the technical difficulties. We're doing a hybrid presentation, I should mention. So we have, I don't know how many folks, Marilyn.
You, myself, and a couple others. Yep.
Okay, so we have a few joining us who are unable to be with us today, but so the title of the presentation is called How to Reduce Solid Waste and Improve Water Quality. So as I mentioned earlier, I work at the Orange County Department of Public Works, Division of Environmental Facilities and Services. We manage a sewer district down in Harriman, and we also manage 3 solid waste transfer stations, one in New Hampton, one in Newburgh, and one in Port Jervis. So basically, all the materials, not all the materials, but a good amount of the materials that get generated in Orange County that get picked up from your curb come to one of these 3 facilities. We don't have what's called flow control, which mandates by law that every trash can emptied here in Orange County has to come to us. Some of it does go to private facilities outside of the county, but much of the material that we do generate does come to us at one of the 3 transfer stations. And these are the 3 transfer stations: New Hampton, Orange County Transfer Station number 1 in New Hampton, and Orange County Transfer Station number 2 in Newburgh, and Orange County Transfer Station number 3 in Port Jervis. So you see the addresses and hours there. We used to accept bulk trash at our Newburgh transfer station, but that has since been closed. The only place where you can go in with a trailer load of material and drop it off would be our transfer station in New Hampton. So I just want to point that out. And this is a sky view of our transfer station in New Hampton. This right here on the bottom, towards the bottom, the big white rectangle is our tipping floor where a lot of the trash comes in. And then towards the right of the screen, you'll see what's called our CDA, which I'll show you in a moment, a better image of. Here's a snapshot by the numbers of what's coming into our transfer station and into our transfer stations. In 2023, about 76,000 tons of solid waste were brought to county transfer stations, along with an additional 10,500 tons of pre-sorted recyclables. The MSW, or the solid waste, the trash, much of it goes to the Keystone landfill in Pennsylvania. And our single stream recyclables, the other can that you put your recyclables into, comes to us and then eventually goes to a facility in Rockland County, and then pre-sorted, and then brought to either a facility in Jersey City or a facility in the South Bronx. And at the same time, as I mentioned in the previous slide, we can accept materials from people who just come pack up the back of their trunk and come to our transfer station at what's called a citizens drop-off area. And that's an image there of our citizens drop-off area in Newburgh. We have 2 others like it in Port Jervis and in New Hampton. What can you bring to the transfer station? You could bring solid waste, $3 for each 36-gallon bag. You could bring construction and demolition waste. You could bring yard waste. You could bring scrap metal and refrigerant-containing appliances. All these have a fee ascribed to them, but you can bring your mixed paper and commingled if you haul it yourself to us for free. And that also includes, you can bring some types of waste oil and antifreeze and car batteries as well, free of charge. So why are sanitary landfills necessary? We're going to talk about recycling and preventing our waste, but we really have to kind of focus on why landfills are actually a necessary innovation in recent times in the modern era. So this is what how waste was typically managed over the years. There'd just be some random waste disposal site that all types of materials would get dumped into. And of course, you have all the toxins seeping into the waterways, right? And seeping into the water table where folks drew their water from. Of course, it's very dangerous, creates a lot of disease. So naturally, we have to move away from that. So that was typical starting in the 1890s, where we had to start thinking about how to collect materials and how to basically dispose of them in a sanitary and hygienic way. That was sparked due to a lot of public health concerns in cities as cities start to grow and become more industrialized. And then in the 1950s, the rise of consumerism and the chemical age led to the rise of sanitary landfills. So that's when they started thinking, okay, have to do more than just bury this into a hole in the ground. We have to kind of start engineering a liner so that, not a lot of this material or the toxins seep into the waterways. And then in the 70s and 80s, there were increased concerns on the contamination of groundwater, which led to increased regulation and more advanced engineering. And that graphic on the left there shows, multiple layers, covers, vegetation even added to it to ensure that, the odors and the vectors and the toxins are really contained in a highly engineered way. And then from the late 80s into the 2000s, we start seeing an evidence of capacity and logistics issues, right? Landfill space starts to get tight, starts to get expensive. We start having to go further and further and further away to find out where we can drop off our trash, right? And so there are some examples such as the Mobro 4000, which is how many of you remember the garbage barge in the late 80s, right? And then, of course, the Great North Pacific Garbage Patch, which I'll show you in a moment. So this is just an image from what was the Mobro 4000, the garbage barge, basically a barge of trash that went from Islip, Long Island, up and down the East Coast to even the Caribbean, I believe, and back a number of times until it eventually found a home. Basically, landfill constraints and also kind of not in my backyard. We don't want to take New York City or New York trash, right? So really that's when we started to burst at the seams and start to think, all right, we have to really start innovating here. And this is where recycling kind of took more of a started to appear in the mainstream consciousness of people. I also talked about the Great North Pacific Garbage Patch. And this is basically, you'll see this, there's a phenomena in the world's oceans. And I'll leave a lot of this to Mary Lynn, but I really want to focus on this for a minute. There's a phenomenon in the oceans where basically you have these gyres, basically where each ocean has this gyre where the water is just swirls, right? It's just part of the natural pattern of how the ocean works. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, we started seeing, and especially at the North Pacific, this agglomeration of trash, mainly plastic trash, right? With the boost of kind of all the single-use plastic use throughout the world, just kind of agglomerating here. And if you could see on the left, that image, toward the right of the left image, you'll see San Francisco. So you'll see the whole west coast of North America. And then you can see an image of the garbage patch. That's a huge scale. Now, it's not a solid item, right? Or just like one, like you can't like walk on it. It's just a big soupy mess and of plastic that phytodegrades, meaning breaks down over time by light, turning it into what you see there in that person's fingertip, basically into these little microscopic crumbs of plastic that eventually get ingested by wildlife and plants and animals, etc., and then back to us, right? So it's a problem, right? And it all goes back to this solid waste kind of issue that we're talking about. So and to hammer it home, we're running out of away. We used to just say, hey, just throw it away. We live in this throwaway culture. Well, we're actually running out of quote unquote away. Based on data collected by Waste Business Journal, over the next 5 years, total landfill capacity in the US is forecast to decrease by more than 15%. This means that by 2021, only 15 years of landfill capacity will remain. However, in some regions, it could be only half that. So this statistic was in 2021, right? So it's a little bit more dire now. Folks have since responded to this and said, hey, no, we can extend it. We can, extend the landfill's life, and we can, create more, better designed products for end of life, which is true. And that's happening. It's probably going to extend the lifespan of these landfills a little bit. But the general gist is we can't keep relying, while they're a great innovation in modern history, we can't rely on it as a crutch for that much longer. We have to use it as a tool to really start working on generating solutions upstream. To do that, we have to really start first looking at our waste. What is in our waste, right? So here's a snapshot from what it's called a waste characterization study that was done at a number of places throughout the United States, where basically they went to different transfer stations and different trash depots to kind of look and understand and analyze the trash. And there was 200, what they found was we generated in 2018, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, I should say, found that we generated 292.4 million tons of trash just in that 1 year alone. And so here's what's consistent of that, what that trash consists of. Some of the bigger slices of this pizza pie, though it's not a very delicious pizza, but the top right you'll see is we have almost a quarter of the material going into the waste stream is paper and paperboard, like cardboard. Another key element is on the bottom left, the gray and the kind of dark orange slices there. That comprises our organics stream. When I say organics, I don't mean like organic food or something that doesn't have pesticides on it. I mean what basically came out of the ground that can go back into the ground and be kind of decomposed and composted, etc. We're going to talk about that later, but that's a huge slice of the pie. That's about a third of our total waste. And then we have plastics at 12.2%. So it's kind of a bigger slice, one of the bigger ones. And then you have other like textiles, which is about 6%, and metals are about 9%. That we really have to kind of like start thinking about, the scale of our waste and how much is going into our landfill and what we have to start to tackle in order to start moving the needle and moving away from this throwaway culture that I spoke about earlier. And the strategies that we have to employ are the EPA recommends is the materials management hierarchy. That the top rung of this inverted triangle, they highly recommend as reducing the amount of trash we generate and reusing as much as we can before even consider throwing anything out. And we'll get into strategies there in a moment. And then recycling and composting as much as we can, as much as the material can be recycled and composted. And then lower, we have energy recovery and treatment and disposal of our trash. We're not going to really talk about the bottom two rungs necessarily. We're going to really just focus in this presentation on the top two rungs. So waste prevention. We make over 4.5 pounds of waste per person per day. I've seen averages of about 4.9. Waste prevention, also known as source reduction, means using less material to get a job done. Waste prevention methods help create less waste in the first place before even recycling. So this is the most impactful thing we can do, just not creating garbage, right? So when you're shopping at a store, do we need to buy that item with all that packaging? No, maybe we can consider something with less packaging or buying in bulk, etc. So some strategies we can employ is refusing. Like I said, try to ditch single use and or bring your own bag, bottle, mug, utensils anywhere you go. So try to kind of adapt that behavior in your life patterns. Reuse. This process is known as beneficial reuse, or turning would-be waste items into a commodity with value, right? So anything like you could see there in the top left, turning jars into containers that you can bring your lunch to work with, right? So that's an example of reuse. And repair. Giving your own things new life by repairing them, right? So we're going to talk about that shortly, but it looks like we've lost that art of repair where we used to mend things, but we have to really start to bring that back because there's a lot of good stuff going out into the curb. I see all too regularly. And thankfully, we have an initiative in the Hudson Valley called the Hudson Valley Repair Cafe, which is really cool. It's a place like a library like this or another community center where lots of skilled fixers, whether it be they can fix lamps, they can mend clothing, electronics, etc. They come, and all you have to do is you're only allowed to bring, I believe, up to 2 items, if not 3. And they don't guarantee that they will fix everything, but they will sure try, and they often do fix what gets brought in there. So it's a pretty cool event, and we have 2 of them coming up in April, one at Woodbury Village Hall and the next one at Highland Falls Library. SaveTheFood.com is another great waste prevention resource. As I mentioned, about 30% of our total waste stream is trash. And of the food that we consume, 40% on average is wasted, thrown into the landfill. That's crazy. So SaveTheFood.com, it's a very easy one to remember. Lots of tips on how to save your food, conserve food, store food, preserve food, tips on the sell-by date. You can eat a lot of different types of food after the sell-by date on the can in the jar. Just go to that website. It'll teach you how to kind of crack that code. But yeah, a lot of that is just meant to kind of keep food moving off the shelves, not necessarily that the food is edible around. There's also a Bring Your Own Bag initiative that the state launched with the Bag Reduction Act of 2020. So you're starting to see less bags at shopping centers, et cetera, and at grocery stores. So the ban's preventing them from just wholesale distributing them willy-nilly as they have been up till now. And also it's requiring a lot of these chain box stores to have a bag recycling area in it. So of the bags that you do accumulate, you can bring there to be recycled. And then there's a Reclothe NY initiative, which is basically, you can just do a Google search and the link is there. But it's just basically a search bar where you could type in your zip code and you could find out where you can find all these textiles recycling bins that are pretty much at many different places. Some are good, some are bad. The good ones are vetted and put on that website. But yeah, you also have your local church or your local school. Definitely feel free to participate in those. As I mentioned, textiles waste is a growing part of our total waste stream. We're also doing this quick little plug for Orange County Green Grub program that I'm working to coordinate with Syracuse Center for Sustainable Community Solutions and the Center for Sustainable Materials Management as SUNY ESF, where basically we're looking to recruit businesses, more like restaurants, that want to move away from the single-use plastic culture of handing you bags and napkins and plastic utensils, etc., and providing them with alternative solutions that could reduce their waste, reduce their impact, and go green, and maybe give a little marketing advice to them on how to kind of put that in the forefront so that they can attract more business. So it's pretty cool. If you're interested, if you know somebody who might be interested, there's a QR code. Deadline to apply is Monday, but we're going to see if we can extend it one more week. Only a few selected of the applicants will be selected. Reuse. Okay, so many of you may know of a place that will accept certain items. Here's a short list of, places that we can bring anything from furniture to working appliances, etc. Housewares, toys, bikes, sports gear, whatever it might be. Each of these drop-off locations, these reuse locations, have a specific type of item or types of items that they accept. I highly recommend you call ahead. There's a great online resource called Dirt Magazine, if you're familiar with Dirt Magazine, and they have what's called the Recyclopedia. So it has another 10 times amount of more drop-off areas that you can bring XYZ type of item. So instead of just saying, all right, let me just wait for bulk day, or let me just, bring it to the transfer station, you could spend that same amount of effort and just find one of these locations that'll take that exact same thing, if it's in good condition, of course, and they'll take it and they'll reuse it or resell it, And also visit these places, buy secondhand, because that's what keeps the whole thing circular. Right? You might find some good finds, you never know. Now down to the next rung, from waste prevention to recycling and composting. Why recycle? I think we're all by now understand generally that recycling is a good thing, but I'm going to take this next 30 seconds to remind us all of all the benefits of recycling. We currently have about 37.4 million tons of materials that could be recycled out there in our solid waste stream, but only about 20 million tons are thrown in the trash due to lack of access and knowledge and participation. So more than half of that material that could be recycled easily is just trashed, right? Unfortunately, if we all banded together and recycled correctly, and I'm going to put an asterisk there, and I'm going to go into that very shortly, these are the beneficial impacts of recycling, right? We can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We conserve a lot of oil and natural resources. We can take 20 million cars off the road. And one thing that's near and dear to my heart, we can generate up to 370,000 full-time equivalent jobs. I believe there was a statistic, the recycling industry generates four times more jobs than the trash industry, right? Because all the multiplication effect of materials being processed and turned into other things. So it hits many other rungs, requiring more labor involvement to be able to produce new things. So very important to always revisit this and think about this and understand why recycling is important. It's not just a do-gooder thing, it really helps. Unfortunately, recycling has hit a big challenge, or maybe fortunate. And I'll get into why maybe fortunately. Up until recently, more than 20% of recyclables generated in the US have gone to China. And at the start of 2018, the Chinese government enacted a ban on the import of various kinds of low-grade plastics and other materials that are extremely hard to recycle. So basically, they told us, we don't want your recycling anymore. Why? Because wish cycling is using our recycling bins as a second trash can. So it's basically the act of people putting in incorrect items into her trash can, hoping and wishing it'll get recycled, but it's not the case, right? Actually, 1 in 4 items that we place in the recycling cart is not recyclable. But on the bottom left there, you see what China's threshold that they set upon. They want us to, they will only accept 0.5% contamination. We're at upwards of 25%. So we're far apart from the biggest recycling market. So we have, that sends a signal to us. When you're sick and you're doing a bad job, you have to do better, right? How many of you have seen this? I think a lot less lately in Goshen, I have to admit. But this has been a prevalent, not just all over the country, I should say, right? This is an example of wish cycling. So you can't even tell what's the trash bin or what's the recycling bin. Here are some examples of contamination. Plastic bags, right? Polystyrene, right? Or styrofoam, food waste, plastic wrappers, and also recyclables in a plastic bag, right? A lot of people make the good effort of, hey, I'm gonna put a recyclable in a plastic bag. And you have to really empty the recyclables into the container because the bag itself is not recyclable. And we'll get into why in a few minutes. Okay, so a few years ago, I went to the transfer station. I took these shots of what's coming in, right? We have since enacted a resolution to charge a fine, an additional fine to folks, to haulers that come in and bring contaminated waste items or loads. But you can see there, you'll see recyclables in bags. You'll see hangers, which are not recyclable, and I'll talk about that shortly. On the top left, you'll see plastic bags and rubber items, etc. You'll see also trash bags and also even appliances and hazardous waste, apparently. So that was a sad image right there that I had to stumble upon, and but I'm happy to show it to you as a learning tool. Also, we have prevalence of lithium batteries and other kinds of batteries that are just put in the trash and recycling bin. This, as a PSA, please do not put your batteries or your car batteries or your lithium batteries in the trash can. Dispose of them appropriately. AutoZone Napa will take your car batteries back. Your local chain box stores like Home Depots will take lithium batteries and batteries for your power tools back. Definitely don't put them in the trash bin or the recycling bin. We get fires regularly, which could hurt people and not only hurt people and shut down our facilities, creating big problems. So this is what's called a screen roller at what's called a materials recovery facility, where materials eventually go to be recycled. As you can see, it's just a bunch of cylinders with these kind of grabber things that kind of pull materials up. This is what it looks like after a day, probably after a few hours of work, right? You have these guys going in there with the jaws of life, prying out all these, wires and bags, etc., off of these rollers. So really have to move away from this because it's really gumming up literally the system every time we recycle incorrectly. So now we know the problem, the scale of the problem. Here's where we start to kind of clean up our act a little bit. I'm gonna go over a few items about what to recycle and how. So what to recycle, we can recycle any kind of clean mixed paper, right? That doesn't have food on it. If it's got a little plastic window on it or a little staple, those minor things can get sifted out. It's really when you have a greasy pizza box or you have a laminated paper item that shouldn't go in there, right? Want clean mixed paper. A rule I like to use is if you can rip it, you can recycle it, right? Just as long as it's clean. Metal. So any kind of household metal item like tin foil, pie tins, cans of all kinds, even empty aerosols. The pie tins on the right are a little bit misleading, should be a little bit cleaner than that. Not that they have to be squeaky clean, spotless, though you should try to get to that level. That may be on the edge of being too dirty. But the reason why we want that is, right, we want the markets to be able to accept and want our material and not think that they're accepting trash to be able to refuse loads. Because we want our material to eventually actually be recycled. Glass. Yes, technically most programs can accept glass bottles and jars only. Window panes or mirrors or stuff like that cannot be put in your recycling bin. However, I do recommend that folks bring any kind of bottle deposit bottles back to reverse vending machines or the beverage store. They'll accept them and give you not only your 5-cent deposit back, but also that ensures that that glass material will get turned into a higher value item rather than potentially being broken and trashed anyway, even if it went to the MRF. So that's just a kind of like a best practice pro tip. Now, plastics. A lot of us tend to get confused and look at the bottom of the container or the bottle or whatever. What plastic code is it? So yes, there are 7 plastic resin codes, of which there are some materials that are recyclable in each one and some that are not. Some are exclusively not recyclable. We're not going to get into the science and the physics of that right now. We're just going to, this is recycling for the masses, right? What I want you guys to remember is if it's a rigid plastic container that's clean and free of food, you can recycle. So you want to be free of plastic film, plastic bags, wrappers, no styrofoam, nor compostable plastics. You're seeing more and more compostable plastics. Can't put them in the recycling bin because of the processes they go through. Do not turn them into other plastic items. And of course, no food or liquid contaminants. Beverage cartons, yes, you can put them in a recycling bin. Make sure you empty and rinse them. These actually get turned into nasal tissue or toilet paper. I want to make a note about, oh, we can't see it. Hold on. Dual bay trucks. Can't. Some of you may have seen only one truck come pick up both your trash and your single stream recycling. This is not to say that there are some companies that are being sneaky and may combine the trash and recycling just because it makes their day run faster and they, don't have time to do another run. But more often than not, and I've been proven wrong, admittedly, a number of times, bigger waste haulers like IWS, County Waste, et cetera, it's not a plug for them, but just want to explain, will have what's called a dual bay truck that can accept trash and recycling in the same truck. These are kind of relatively newer innovations that allow them to kind of optimize routes and not have to send multiple trucks everywhere. It's actually kind of better for the environment, less fumes. And this is actually right in front of my house. I was pulling in after work and I was like, hey, can I check one of these things out? I didn't say who I was, but the guy was so cool and nice. He's like, yeah, come in. I was like, so do you actually do recycling? Again, I was just kind of like, didn't explain who I was. Like, yeah, of course. And he showed me how, he would take one bin of trash, open up a hopper, it would go into another vault in that same hopper. And then that hopper would switch. It would open up to another open up to the other side where an additional vault would open and the single stream would be tipped into it. So more often than not, if you see there is one truck going, they will, if it doesn't look like this, definitely let me know, call me. We want to really start to, and if you can get like a number, a model, a truck number, but yeah, you'll find a lot of these on the road. And I've been convinced that there are many of these on the road and they are actually doing the source separation with these types of vehicles. So now we saw the materials leaving the curbside, coming to our transfer station. So after it leaves our transfer station, ends up at what's called the MRF, the Materials Recovery Facility. And it starts with the materials being tipped on an open floor and eventually with this big grabber and this excavator dropped onto a conveyor belt where eventually it gets picked through by hand by people who are employed to kind of pick out some of the first contaminants that they see. And here's a brief video. So that, I think he's taken out a lot of. And then after that, this is where it goes to be optically sorted by lasers. So if it sends something not recyclable based off of a pre-programmed code in the algorithm, it'll send a puff of air to shoot it out. And these are those materials, the paper materials getting sent to the mill. This is them getting turned into a bale. And each bale weighs approximately a ton. And these are materials ready for market after they've been sorted, sifted through, baled, and yeah, so on the top left, you see mixed paper, tin, you got rigid plastics, standard offers paper. All of these have different market values depending on the month and the prices that are set in open market. But I show you these just to kind of send the message home. And this was last spring that I visited this facility. Materials are getting recycled. There is a process to it. It all starts upstream, us doing it correctly to reduce some of the costs and the kind of the waste that happens throughout the system, right? But in the end, materials do get recycled. One disappointing experience that I had a couple of years ago, I was with a fourth grade class at the Citizens drop-off area in New Hampton, and I'm explaining folks how to recycle at the transfer station. And somebody in his truck just drove by. He's like, "Hey kids, don't listen to him. It doesn't get recycled anyway." I just wanted to, please sir, come over here and explain how you know that, because I've actually been to these facilities. I see this happening every day. So I really stress, right? Materials are being recycled. It's when we don't recycle correctly. Yes, he's right. We're just wish cycling, just throwing stuff in there. Yes, naturally we have to take that out and throw it in the trash because it's been rendered trash through all that contamination. And so these are the bales. This is going to be put on trucks and trailers and barges that are going to go out to market, right? So that's the scale of the waste on a given day at the MRF. Some examples of recycled products, just go through this really fast. Paper boxes out of our paper, any kind of metal item gets turned into other kinds of consumer metal products, from automobiles to construction supplies, etc. Examples of recycled glass products. Like I said, the more we use the reverse vending machines or bring our bottles to the beverage store, the more we'll get higher, better uses out of it. But yes, please recycle your bottles and jars. Plastic gets turned into anything from furniture to clothing to toys. Beverage cartons, as I mentioned before, toilet paper and nasal tissue. And don't worry about the hygienic aspect of it. The beverage cartons get blasted with hot water, stripping off this hermetic seal that's on your Tropicana, bottle, or beverage carton. So if you blow your nose on something, you're not going to be, blowing your nose on trash. But some bring home the recycling no-nos: no food, liquids, or trash, no bags in the recycling bin. Remember the China ban, right? We have to make sure things are clean so we can find markets for it. Expanded polystyrene, no styrofoam in our trash, right? You stick to these things, your recycling can be really pretty good. Also, I want to put in a plug-in for our app called Recycle Coach. How many of you have Recycle Coach? Okay, good half of us here. It's a new app. We partnered with this company that allows us to upload our recycling program onto an app that you could go either on our website or even the Village of Goshen's website, right? And there's a widget there where you can type in, how do you recycle XYZ? And it'll tell you based off of our program that we have here, what you can recycle, or even how you can reuse a certain item, or where you can drop it off before even recycling it. So that whole materials management hierarchy was applied into the manual entries that myself and a colleague did one winter a few years back to make sure that the most updated information is uploaded onto this app. And also you can download it. So just go to your app store or Google Play, type in Recycle Coach, and then you enter the municipality you live in. And then you'll have something at the palm of your hand, which will also, I have to really give a lot of props to the Village of Goshen and a few other municipalities in the county. who have partnered with this. They could take the app experience to a whole other level by adding in like pickup days, do notifications like when the next bulk collection is. So when you have the app, you get a push notification. Oh, this Saturday is bulk collection, other than having to wait for it or miss it, right? So that's a great feature of having the app on your phone. And this is what the widget looks like on municipality webpage, right? So it's just like you put in your schedule and then you go into what goes where. So you can really personalize it to you and kind of find out what the most updated information is. If you go on some municipalities' websites, you'll find something from like the mid-'80s, right? So really, this is a move to modernize it and standardizing this type of information so everybody has the correct information. And I know I'm really taking a little while, but I just want to shoot this information to you. Organics and composting, remember that third of the solid waste stream that we can begin to tackle is the organic stream. And if we do it by composting, right? And these are the great benefits of composting. Composting is the controlled aerobic oxygen required biological decomposition of organic materials by microorganisms that we can't see with our eyes. Prevents erosions, conserves water, feeds plants, boosts plant health. It's a cool, nifty video, but we don't have time. We could share this presentation maybe, Melissa, for the folks who signed up. So if anybody wants to take the notes and maybe click on some of the links, you guys can do that. Maybe do an extra credit project for homework. But this is kind of like what a nice little kitchen top container could look like if you're collecting your food scraps on your countertop, just as a FYI. We're doing a composter sale, which is live and currently on our website, where basically, and there's the link right there. You order online and we sell these at cost. We don't make a cent. We just basically take the orders from the public. We put the order into the company we have a contract with, and then they deliver it on said day, right? Wednesday, June 26th, and people can come pick up what they ordered. The whole reason of that is to encourage people to get into composting because they could potentially reduce their waste by a third and provide it at a low cost, right? So these are the different items that are for sale. Again, that's the link. You can definitely check it out there. When we send out the PDF, you can just click on that link or just visit our website. And you don't have to buy one of these. You can, a wire frame container, pallets, if you're handy or whatever. You don't even have to be handy. This is just a way to get people into it. So you could definitely, also for those folks who are unable to or unwilling to compost in their backyard, we have a food scraps drop-off program, and we have established this at 4 drop-off sites in the county last year. We're looking to continue this, to be determined when the start dates will be at each of these sites, but we're looking to basically accept food scraps from the public who are unwilling or unable to compost at home. These are types of items that go into it, right? So any kind of non-meat or non-dairy food scrap we can take at the drop-off, or you can even compost at home. All right, you don't want meat or dairy because you start to attract rodents and other bugs and et cetera. And it gets, if you're not managing it right or as often as you like, for beginners, you definitely don't want to start composting meat and dairy. And here's our program at the farmers market. Every year, past few years, we've been tabling at the market, providing recycling information. But last year we started the food scraps collection at the Goshen Farmers Market, which you see on the right. On the left is the collection in Warwick. It's just basically a few volunteers, and we're happy if you guys are interested, want to spend an afternoon with me. You may have seen me there last year. Hang out, we could teach the public and start moving the needle on food scraps diversion. And here's just some reaction from some of our partner sites: Grow Local Greenwood Lake, the Cornwall Youth Garden Club that volunteers at the Cornwall Farmers Market. Really, they were just ecstatic, and they just took it to a whole other level. Really, they're composting at their farmers market, they're composting at their community gardens, they're taking metrics about how much carbon dioxide equivalent they're reducing. So really just a great example of how communities, when we band together, we can begin to push the needle. And I do want to mention and make note of the Village of Goshen birthday cleanup, which will be coming up on Saturday, April 20th. So all of you who are interested or are available, and also if you can spread the word far and wide, this is coming up in a couple weeks. And how to sign up, the link is down there. So definitely be band together, and this is a great opportunity to make Goshen a lot cleaner. And this is the village cleanup, and there will be another one on June 1st where the village and the town will be banding together. So it's kind of like a back-to-back event where we'll be expanding the scale of the cleanup and actually going into the town of Goshen as well. There were a few events that have been done in the past, so we want to continue that tradition. Many of you who have participated and who are actually organized these or in the office. In this meeting today, really want to give you guys credit for taking the reins and really pushing for this, because it's a great community event that spreads awareness while actually doing a great service environmentally. And here's some some key upcoming dates. The Village of Goshen Earth Day cleanup will be on April 20th. There will also be a bulk collection for your trash on April 29th. The Goshen Farmers Market will be starting on May 17th. And then the town and village joint cleanup will be on June 1st. And then there may be a textiles collection event. Remember, we talked about textiles being a growing issue, and we have to start to find ways of how to divert more of this material. So there might be a textiles and clothing collection event in the future. So keep an eye out for that. And that being said, I'm going to pass it off finally. I'm sorry for taking too long, I'm going to say. And I'm going to pass it off to Mary Lynn.
Okay, there we go. I will share my screen. All right, so I'm really happy to be here. And yeah, I will be discussing some of the things that Ermin mentioned. For example, when people first started, when humankind first started, right, there wasn't very much to be discarded, right? And certainly not very many things that we would find centuries later, right? We're going to find some pottery because it was manipulated. We're going to find some rocks because, again, that was manipulated, but not very much, right? But then as colonization began, most refuse was buried with little to remain, right? So there's like a little bit of metal. We're going to find fragments of flatware and glass, right? And this was the case for, well, from the beginning, thousands of years, and then for hundreds of years. Right, but then as populations and industrialization increased, right, it was pretty common for refuse to be tossed into waterways, like just tossed into the ocean, right? Especially if they were a city near that waterway, including New York, right? So rural areas, people would burn their trash, right? There would be trash piles that were buried, right? But as the decades passed and transportation was motorized, trash pickup became more prevalent on a wider scale, right? You pick it up, it disappeared, it went away, right? The thing is that our civilization started to change, right? And even though some materials were brought to landfills, right, still others were still dumped into the oceans. And there was an increased use of plastics. There was an increased use of chemicals, right? Not only on the industrial level, but at the household level as well. Well, with the advent of the EPA, right? That's our National Organization for Environmental Protection, our state organization, the DEC, and, even on some of the local level, the DEP or Department of Environmental Protection for New York City, there was this Earth movement, right? And a lot of that happened with the lunar landing in 1969, right? So a lot of this change came early in the 1970s. The lunar landing happened in 1969. Why are they significant? Well, because a way became visual, right? We saw Earth from outer space and we're like, oh, it's not going away, it's going somewhere here, right? So the sanitary landfill was prioritized because we realized that water, land, and air are all connected, right? So as stated previously, now we recycle, right? It is a norm. But the emphasis now is on contamination. Let's not contaminate what we can recycle. Meanwhile, landfills do continue to fill. Additionally, food waste and yard trimmings are a big majority of waste, again, as previously stated. So here is what some large bulk pickup might look like, right? And one of the things that is prevalent is appliances. both big and small. And although they may be more energy efficient, right, they have a shorter lifespan. And they're expensive. So oftentimes people will purchase a less expensive item, but then it doesn't have the same lifespan as some of those older things, like especially ranges and refrigerators did. In addition, items that are furniture and mattresses, they use lesser quality raw materials, right? A lot of them are petroleum based and not filled with organic filling like wool or cottons or straws that in the past may have decayed, right? So we also talked about textiles, and there's a couple things about textiles that are water related, right? So a lot of our textiles are petroleum based. Anytime something is petroleum based, we have to consider what that might do to our water quality, right? And then there's the addition of dyes in our washing process and our manufacturing process. And then Ermin mentioned microplastics, right? Microplastics come in a couple of different ways, and one of them is fibers, right? So this particular overfilled closet is filled with some lacy items. Let's put it this way. If you've ever tried to iron something that appears lacy and it starts to melt, then it's a petroleum-based product. Any kind of fibers that come off of that, especially during the laundering process, adds to microplastics in our waterways. So again, look for reducing your quantity of textiles, including linens, right? Think about thrifting, donations, and other ways that you can cut back on those items entirely, right? And what does it mean for water quality, right? So if items need to be manufactured, there's going to be water used in that manufacturing. The further anything is transported, that transportation is going to increase something happening to the water that it's being transferred upon, or any emissions that are released from land transportation, right? Consumers are constantly buying more than they need, and I'll sort of hit on that a little bit later, right? But reusable items use less water, not only from the initial manufacturing, right, but over time, because we're not multiplying the manufacturing of that same item used over and over again. So keep in mind, again, that anything petroleum based is going to have a high risk of water contamination. Keep in mind, for example, something like a smartphone uses 3,090 gallons of water to be produced, right? Then the majority of them are coming from overseas. Now, when we think about water use, you have to think about mining of materials. You have to think about production of the components, right? At each step of the way, water is at risk. And I know that having the smartest smartphone is very important to some folks, but it is something that needs to be considered. So if you are not one of those people that need the smartest of smartphones, maybe buying one that is refurbished. Refurbished is a market that is not used as much as it should be. And again, when you're thinking about printers, think about companies that have longevity. I don't want to tell you how old my Canon printer is, but it still works. So in addition to, appliances and textiles, we have furniture. And furniture items are not manufactured the way that they used to be. So we have to think about, number one, transportation, how far are they coming, and what is that doing to carbon output, right? We have to think about what materials are being used, because most of those materials are not organic. They're not going to break down. Again, it's on the consumer. So if you can get something that looks good, but is inexpensive, think about how long it's going to last. All right, so as we mentioned before, a large amount of garbage is from food waste. Ermin mentioned ways that we can think about that, right? Transportation of food and food packaging and storage is a huge impact on water quality, right? So think about those, right? Especially those items that are over packaged, right? So again, you're storing your food properly, consider food donation when it's near expiration, grow more of your own food, composting and purchasing from farm direct or farm market, co-op. Those are all going to have a huge impact on increasing water's quality, right? And as mentioned before, not only can you have a backyard composter, but there are worm composters, so you can just keep in your basement. They do an awesome job of breaking things down and quickly. And there are a couple different ways you can look those up. Worm juice is like the best fertilizer ever. And that's the liquid that's produced when worms decompose trash, food trash, right? Now, one thing you shouldn't do is use your garbage disposal. And people are like, oh, but I'm not putting it in the trash. Well, technically, you are, right? Because water, wastewater goes to a wastewater treatment facility, and the sludge that is removed contains food, it contains your toilet tissue, it contains your feces, all of that, and it goes to the landfill, right? And think about also high water use at that particular sewage treatment plant, right? So if it's early in the morning or if it's later in the day, people are showering, you're increasing those things being put directly into waterways because of sewage overflow, right? So please do not use your garbage disposal. I know it seems like so easy. You could increase your organic matter while you're growing your own food, right? You can increase the soil quality, which is huge when it comes to water quality. Soil quality and water quality are hand in hand. You're going to increase soil permeability. That means how water goes through the soil. And we want to retain water in our groundwater system. We don't want it to run off, right? So increasing soil permeability is a big deal. We want to reduce the need for herbicides and pesticides. So when we compost and we're adding organic matter, we don't need to use herbicides at all if done well and done properly. And that's going to reduce toxins in the soil, which in turn is going to reduce toxins in our waterways, whether it's the groundwater or it's runoff into streams. And in addition to gardening, composting creates great potting soil for your indoor plants. Now, I talked about permeability with soils and increasing soils quality, basically, right? So after periods of drought, if there's not enough organic matter, right, soil becomes hydrophobic, right? So hydrophobic basically means that the water's going to bead up and it's going to basically just roll away. It's going to take with it some of that loose soil, right? So I like to think of it like if you've ever used that Nesquik powder to make chocolate milk, right? You put it in there and you have to stir it or it's going to be a little hydrophobic at the top of that milk, right? Other examples are if you store your planters and at the beginning of the season, you want to reuse some of that soil. It's going to take a lot to get that soil to take in that moisture. And that season's coming up, so you're going to get reminded of it, right? So keep in mind that heavy rains is going to not only cause serious erosion, but it's going to increase things like turbidity. Now, turbidity is when there are things floating in the water. And if you live near the Hudson you can actually see how it will discolor after heavy precipitation. And sometimes it's because of this hydrophobic behavior. And so increasing our soil quality and increasing soil's permeability is going to reduce that dramatically, right? So another thing is the rain barrels, right? So Ermin mentioned that there are some rain barrels that are part of the incentive to buy through the county. And you could get a fancy rain barrel. You can collect rainwater in a lot of different ways, right? Excuse me. But rain barrels are going to collect that water. Number one, it's going to collect water that may be richer in those things that you may use a fertilizer for, because especially during thunderstorms, that water is going to have a lot more going on, right? It's going to have that nitrogen, that phosphorus, that potassium, right? That plants need better than, say, your garden hose for sure, right? So you want to think about adding either a rain barrel or even something that's going to catch the rainwater, a rain garden sort of situation. Now, in addition to those things that I've already mentioned, right, you can increase the quality of water by, improving a couple things around the house, right? So let me talk about it. Increase the area of natural growth over the lawn. We love our lawns. We hate when there's a whole lot of, clover and dandelion and violets, right? We like that uniformity, but having a monoculture like a lawn requires you to fertilize, requires you to use herbicides. And unfortunately, some of those are going to get into the groundwater. Unfortunately, some of those are going to get into our stormwater, which I'm going to mention as well. So think about reducing monocultures and increasing the amount of space that you use that's not lawn, right? Other things is better pet practices when we wash outdoors, right? Car washing. When we wash our cars in our home, like in our home area, if we are on the driveway, especially a non-permeable surface, those soaps, those cleansers, those cleaners that you're using are going to go down the driveway, and then they're probably going to go into a storm drain, right? The same goes for pressure washing your home or your fences or your outdoor furniture. So, think about the products that you're using. Think about how you can use, microfibers that may not need as much cleaner or water for that matter. Think about products that we know are a little bit safer for the environment, especially baking soda or vinegar. Right? You can wash your vehicle on a lawn. I know it's not always like ideal to drive your car onto the lawn, but it's going to cut down on what you remove from your car going into waterways, right? And it's going to allow the water to go through a porous surface like grass, or if your lawn is like mine, then you have dandelions and clover and you have violets in there, and they get watered. Another thing to consider is dog waste, right? Unfortunately, a lot of people will train their pets when they're walking them to go on the roadway so that when stormwater flows, it goes down the storm drain, which are often referred to as sewers. And I'll get into that in a little bit more. But think about the concentration of dog waste and how you can reduce that, and also dispose of waste properly. The same goes for if you are the owner of a swimming pool, right? When you drain your pool, even if it's by a couple of feet, understand that that's a lot of gallons of water. And if that water is chlorinated or salted, it can harm waters that are in the waterways where storm water is probably going to go, right? It also can affect people that are at lower elevations than the pool may be. So we always encourage, if you're adding to your driveway, if you're adding to your walkway, consider a permeable surface instead of blacktop or concrete. And we get a lot of folks that say, oh, they're a little harder to shovel. Yeah, but you're also going to retain a lot of that water. Now, I mentioned that I would talk more about stormwater, and the Water Authority has a great short animated video that I want to share with you. So hopefully you will enjoy this very quick video, The Truth About Storm Drains. The truth about storm drains. Storm drains are the grates that are on the side of the roadway and in parking areas often referred to as sewers. Sewer implies that the water goes to a sewage treatment plant. Sewage treatment plants are factories that clean wastewater from homes and businesses. When you use the sink, toilet, and shower in the bathroom, or appliances like washing machines and dishwashers, dirty water goes down a sewer pipe. If you live in a city or town, it probably goes to the sewage treatment plant. So is there sewage in the drain on the side of the road? Probably not. Drains along roadways and parking areas are designed to move water off the roadway to make it safer for driving. Too much water on a roadway or parking area can cause a car to lose control and lead to an accident. So where does the water go? Most likely it will go to the nearest waterway, like a stream, river, or lake. Have you ever noticed how clean roadways and parking areas look after a rainstorm? The reason is that water carries anything on the pavement into the storm drain. There's bound to be some natural material like leaves, soil, small stones and twigs, but oftentimes there are other things too. Litter. From clumsiness to carelessness, litter is everywhere. Because it's on pavement, large items such as aluminum soft drink cans, plastic water bottles, and polystyrene coffee cups will get flattened, making them an easier fit through the grates. Small items like paper or wrappers have no trouble sliding through the grates. From those drains, water travels through pipes directly into streams, lakes, and rivers. When people toss items out of car windows, it appears as if the item disappears, when in actual fact, they simply disappear from the person continuing on their journey. Rather than disappear, the item is left on the side of the road or blown clear into a nearby waterway like a stream. Instead of tossing items out windows, throw it away. A trash can is usually sufficient, but separating garbage from recyclables is a better option because it eliminates solid waste from our landfills or garbage dumps. It does not take much time or effort to separate trash. Litter isn't the only thing that can go down a storm drain. Sometimes soaps and cleaners go down there as well. Soap from car washing is the biggest of the causes. The soap, along with the water, will travel down driveways and into storm drains. Typically, people do not think much of the water running to the lowest point. The water and soap will inevitably go into the storm drains and away from the user. People typically do not think of things they can no longer see. The saying, out of sight, out of mind, might ring a bell, but we need to remember where the water from storm drains is likely to go. Soap and other cleaners are not good for waterways that have organisms that rely on clean water for survival. The best thing to do is to bring your car to an automatic or do-it-yourself car wash to be cleaned. If there aren't any in your area, the next best thing is to park your car in the grass and let it go through the soil instead. This will have less of an impact. Is your car leaking oil? If so, that oil can also go down the storm drain. Fixing damages quickly will lessen the effects. To clean up oil on pavement, you can try pouring cat litter or commercial petroleum spill agents. After letting the spill get absorbed, sweep up thoroughly and bag it for trash collection. Do animals get in your trash? How and when you put your trash out for collection can be the cause of contamination for storm drains. Be sure your cans are secure and not overflowing. especially in areas where animals are known for getting into trash. Secure lids, efficient cans, limiting the time out at the curb, and even trash can sheds can help with this issue. Not just wild animals, pet waste is another concern for storm drains. When water running off lawns and sidewalks lead to storm drains, pet waste left there can get into the water. Pet waste that is not bagged and put into the trash can not only leach into the soil, but get carried along with water, especially if the precipitation is steady or accumulates like snow. Keeping stormwater clean is easy if you know the truth about storm drains and where they lead. All right, so now you know the truth about storm drains. And one of the things that is really prevalent in the litter that we find are those single-use, something that we refer to as convenient consumables, right? They have a convenience to them. But, and people say, oh, if you get cloth napkins, then you're using so much water. It is a fraction of the amount of water that it takes to make a paper napkin that's used one time, right? So this is talking over the lifespan of the cloth napkin. I'm a big proposer, especially if it's just like allergy season and my nose is running, to use a handkerchief as well. I tend to use a facial tissue if it's sickness, right? But if it's not. So using items that are reusable, that don't add to our trash is actually cutting down on water contamination, right? And it's really just the little changes that have the biggest results, right? And I'm really thankful that Ermin and myself from the Water Authority and you all got to be together to talk about that. I can re-share this last slide if you want to go to our website or check out our YouTube channel. But we only have a few minutes left for questions, so I'm going to stop sharing just in case you have some questions.
Anybody have any questions? There's a lot, but yep.
I mean, a lot of it seems to be more like landowners or basically landowners, but people that are in development who want to have like compost. We don't have a flat basement. We have to do a one part garage, but that's the oldest stuff. So you were talking about collecting. Is that like a weekly thing or what's the generation?
For the food scraps?
Yeah.
Yep. So once that gets launched, once the farmers market opens, we will have a food scraps collection site weekly. Yep. Until
Just with the market, so market ends in the fall.
so that's a bigger hurdle that we have yet to tackle. Maybe one day it'll get to a permanent collection somewhere in the village.
For the summer.
Yep. Yeah. At least for the summer, at least just to get people going, and especially in the farmers market season where you get a lot of vegetables, etc. So it's a great intro to folks who can't compost at home to at least bring it to the farmers market for part of the year. We can at least guarantee the materials will be composted. Yep. Want to give a shout out definitely to the Village of Warwick and Sustainable Warwick. They do another wintertime collection at Price Chopper off of Route 94. So they've taken that extra mile. Maybe something similar can be done here or other municipalities, but again, the farmers market collection is just kind of like a, for part of the year, seasonal collection of it.
Does the eventual compost get bagged for use at home or where for the citizens? Or will it be bagged for sale for funding?
Typically for these small collections, that material just gets reused in the market. I'm sorry, at their community garden. There is like a big reduction in the volume when materials eventually get composted. So actually finished compost is like
Yeah.
less than like a fourth the volume. That's not to say that if you participate in one of these collections and you establish a rapport with them, there might be an opportunity where you can say, you know, hey, if I could have some finished compost, they might be able to work something out with you. But as far as having a formal, official, here's all the compost, we're going to sell it or give it away, it's a more of a challenge for a small community garden that's doing it.
I will put a plug in for the county composters. I personally have one, moved it with me. And they really do keep animals out. So if you are considering, it's not a very large, I mean, seems like it when you're trying to get it in your car, but it doesn't take up a lot of space in your yard. And especially if you turn it properly, you're going to get some results for personal use.
I have two questions.
Sure.
One is, what is your suggestion for when we have to drop the water level in our pools? And the second question is, what about yard waste being, when the village collects that, who do they compost that and then sell it back?
I'll let Mary Lynn tackle the first question on the pools. Can you reiterate the question about the pool level?
Yes, so you mentioned that when we're dropping the water level of our pools, that either chlorine or salt goes into the groundwater, the ground and the water. So what's your suggestion for when we need to do that? What are we supposed to do?
You know, it's a tough one. I mean, ideally, if it's a permanent pool and you're not doing it very often, then just find a more porous area and keep moving your outflow, right? So you're not super saturating that porous area, so you're not like flooding a space. But as opposed to having it go down the driveway, if you could have it go to, you know, if you've got a space in the back where there's more plants, where it's okay for it to get a little bit mushy, that's ideal. I hope I answered. I mean, if you can do a little bit at a time too, it is thousands of gallons, right? But again, I think the best mode is stay away from seasonal pools, right? Because that's a big input. And then when you do a reduction, you know, do that reduction on a porous area, something that's not going to be affected by the chlorine or the salt, and then just move it so you don't, you know, flood that space.
To answer your second question, I believe the village's material comes to our facility, our yard waste facility, and we compost it. We don't have public access or a giveaway program yet or a sale yet. Our hope is, and I may or may not have mentioned it, but we will be planning on building and establishing a food scraps composting facility. So once that's established, we'll hopefully have educational programs and giveaways, if not program to sell the material. So right now we don't have an official program yet for that type of a giveaway, but hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll be able to set something like that.
I'm thinking also that eventually maybe collecting, you know, kitchen waste as another pickup, right, with the garbage, you know, and again, it would be promoting more people to save that waste and again, compost it and potentially get the usable compost back to the city.
That's a tougher nut, admittedly. Usually those types of pickup programs that you'd see are more viable in cities with denser, denser housing units where you can get a lot. When you have routes that are spread out and being that food scraps is about 18% of your waste, doesn't really pay to send a third truck out to collect it. Not that it's impossible. I think starting off on a kind of community scale on a drop off could lead to, you know, at least begin to start pushing the needle, and hopefully, I don't know if we'll eventually get to that here, especially in Village of Goshen, but we can do the more local community composting, whether it's backyard or drop offs, I think the better will be.
There are some youth-led initiatives. There's one in the Albany area where literally youth like ride these modified bicycles to collect. The compost, it's a great program because it actually employs those youth. They're getting exercise. There's a lot of like cool benefits to it. They also like use the same or similar, I should say, vehicles to sell smoothies to like earn money. But I think if it's going to be done, it has to be done in a more dense area. And improving the soil quality in the Albany area has been like so successful because youth are involved.
If anyone wants to look it up, it's called the Radix Center, RADIX. One last question because it's almost 7 o'clock. It could be a two-parter. Yeah. Oh,
Can I talk a little bit
Oh.
about recycling? I know we're talking
Sure.
about composting.
yeah, no worries. Yeah, please.
That the recycle coach doesn't have an endless encyclopedia.
Sure.
Because there are certain things that, well, this is foil and this is rigid plastic, but this is not recyclable.
Yeah, when you get into like multi-material items, what you could do with that. So the first item for those who can't see was like a blister pack for like a chewing gum. Yeah, once you have foil and you have like plastic, molded plastic, typically not recyclable because it's just got too many different types of materials on it. Yeah, so the second item is a kind of toothbrush package where you have a cardboard back piece to like a molded plastic. If you separate that, that should be fine.
And
The
then-
other thing with the toothbrushes, seriously consider using bamboo toothbrushes. They come in a cardboard box. Like you're reducing plastics in many different ways. And the water quality from producing the bamboo item is so much better than the alternative. Not to mention, microplastics, which, if you do want more information on water conservation, on microplastics, I highly encourage you. I see Ashley in the audience. You could talk to Ashley, and she can direct you to our Water Authority website, which has an extensive amount of information.
Okay, Betsy has one or two more items.
They say these K-cups can go around the planet a bazillion times, but there's a gizmo that takes the plastic base away from the coffee top. These, I believe, are recycled.
Yeah, it
Rigid
looks like it's a rigid
plastic.
single plastic thing. Yeah,
It's,
that would be, yeah.
that makes me feel.
If you can separate it like that, yeah.
Um,
But if you still have the lid on it and that cloth little thing in there, coffee in there,
no, that I understand.
So this is where you would use like, okay, maybe I should just go back to the regular coffee pot.
Some of the silicone ones are not as bad as people think they are. So if you want to try a reusable pod, you may want to talk to friends, you may want to put it on a forum before you go purchasing one, but they do make reusable pods.
Okay. Christine, did you want to go?
Wonder, I've been seeing people from the DPW go around on Wednesdays on recycling day and checking the bins. I was just wondering exactly what's going on with that. If Maria could speak on that at all.
Sure. So my name's Maria from the Village of Goshen, and have tried to implement some initiatives related to recycling, doing our little part that we can. And everything's gonna take a little bit of time. So for those of you that are in the village, you may be familiar, a couple billing, probably like 30 seconds.
Take your
A
time.
couple of
Take your time.
cycles ago with our water sewer payments, we did an insert. So this was a beautiful color flyer about what can and can't be recycled. I was so happy when I went to my neighbor. She didn't know that I was like helping with this part. She has it posted in her pantry. We also have a Go Goshen app, which is really to notify anybody of anything going on within the community that's more weather related, road closures, but with like the bulk pickup week, that kind of thing, we will definitely be sure to post those up there as well. So it's Go Goshen. The town of Goshen also has one. I believe it's Goshen Connect. And then the big thing is no plastic bags. big, no, it's gotten my family, gotten everybody at work on board, even had to get our cleaning folks involved, that they have to dump our shredding bags, into our recycling bin. So, as Christine had mentioned, we're taking it a step further, we're kind of doing like audits, if you will, of the recycling bins. And homeowners will get like little tags that just say you have the incorrect materials in here, and we usually tell them what it is. And honestly, plastic bags are the biggest culprit. So it's a separate crew, and they're trying to do like streets by streets. They're doing this as they possibly can with the weather getting nicer. I know they'll be outside doing lots of projects, but they're really trying hard to do it. So we had somebody call and they were upset because we didn't take their things, and then they called back and said, we know why. And they were.
Are you saying that, you know, in my house, my garbage taken from my sink, that's where the garbage from. And I throw that in the bin, that's not acceptable.
In the green bin, it can go in. So green bin is okay, it can go in there. It's the blue bin that you can easily see. I think Ermin had a great shot of overflowing with material that can't be.
So I don't have to bring mine to the neighbor.
No. Be good. And then I just want to thank Urban for his leadership. We have a nice little community recycling group. And the majority of the members are here. The Mayor O'Donnell was here before, and then just the town of Goshen is also involved as well. And then the recycle coach app. We're happy to hear any alternatives or solutions people have. It's difficult to implement, and but trying to do our little part as well.
Thanks.
Thank you, Maria. All right, I guess that'll be it. Melissa, do you want to close out the?
Oh, well, thank you to Ermin and Mary Lynn for the presentation. Let's give another round of applause. And yeah, so also Ermin, if you want to, and even Mary Lynn, if you wanted to send me the presentation, I can email it to everybody interested, as well as, if anyone on Zoom is interested. I don't know if I have people on Zoom's information, but even some people who couldn't make it tonight.
Sure. Happy to. Definitely. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everybody.